There we go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the POWLAX podcast. This is your host, Patrick Chapla, and in today's episode, I'm pretty excited for it. We are going to be discussing basically the idea of your shadow, basically all the things you don't like about yourself, and kind of how you can try to integrate that into who you are so that then you're not afraid to do all the things people like to do. And so we're kind of going to talk through exactly how I came to this topic. I think there were a couple steps I find pretty cool and someone I'm drawing a good amount of reference to as we begin to talk through all of this. But so I'm pretty excited to have this discussion. So let's just get started. So before we go into all of this, a couple little announcements. First off, I am extremely excited to say that we are now under contract on our own condo as well as our new house. So that's going to be an exciting move, and I couldn't be more pumped to have a backyard and to, be able to actually save some money by moving into a bigger place. So that's definitely going to be very cool. So a couple other announcements. If you want to buy pro lacrosse balls, definitely buy pro lacrosse balls. They're the best balls that you can buy. Use code POWLAX for 10% off. Also, that works with FlipGoalie at flipgoalie.com as well. But so, let's see, any other announcements? Oh, this podcast is brought to you by the POWLAX store. Visit the POWLAX store with a link in the description, and you can buy some POWLAX merch, whether it be this Colorado flag logo or the simple white logo. I'm actually pretty excited. Someone ordered 5 stickers and a shirt last week, and with that order, they give me a free one. So I do not yet even have one of my own single white logo shirts, but so I'm going to be getting one here in the next couple weeks. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't think that they were hit very hard by this whole situation, but so that's definitely going to be cool. Charlie Boone, there's your shout out. Let's see. The beginning of these always kind of mixes me up because I don't know all of the. I should probably just write them down and have a whole thing, or even just record it and then just have it do it on its own. So as we get into this, a couple quick things on how we got to exactly what we're going to talk about. So first off, I definitely want to shout out Nick Lewis. Nick Lewis is a coach at, I think it's It's not Rangeview. It's Mountain Range High School, I believe. And recently, during this whole situation where he's been at home, he's actually been doing something very cool, which is he started doing meditations through Facebook. And I'm someone who very much so advocates for anyone who is going to try and do, share anything about what they enjoy doing with a bunch of people. And the trouble with that usually is for most people that they are, very self-conscious with what they are doing. And you can tell that there's some angst if you're really sharing who you are with the world, because basically, there's judgment that will come back at you, and people may not like what you're doing, and that can be a little bit freaky. And so I always make it a point to like and comment on his videos, because they're cool videos, because you get to see what he's enjoying, where he is in his life, and kind of what he's seeing. And he's not just some random person on the internet. He's someone that I know. I actually probably pissed him off most recently when I saw him, because we were doing our what do you call those? Our scrimmages before this whole situation hit where we couldn't play anymore. And we were on these 2 fields, and one of the fields that we were on for our first 2 games, had this big hill by it. So I had my camera person go up on the hill, because getting elevation and filming is just essential, because it allows you to see the field much better than it would if you didn't. And so we were supposed to play on the game that was farther away from that. And I actually, I talked to basically every coach around within the 4 teams that were playing, and just basically had us switch fields, which meant that all of his parents had to move, which I didn't really foresee being a huge issue, but it was a little bit of a distraction before our last game. But so this week he put out something that I thought was very, very cool. And I think this might become how I begin the podcast /live stream every week. he has a video, and so check him out on, I want to say he's got him on YouTube. I know he has him on Facebook, but it's basically the 5 podcasts that he took the most from in the last few days. And so he discusses what those podcasts talked about briefly. And as he speaks on what the podcasts offered, it's a 7-minute video. It'll kind of, it's a recommendation towards these podcasts. And so one of the things that I recommended to him was to, describe more of why these podcasts resonated with him. Because the thing about being online in any form is that there's content everywhere. People don't really care about content. They care about you. And what I mean by that is this. So you could take me as an example, but I don't think I'm the best example to use. Let's take streamers. Streamers are probably the most important. You can watch people play video games, and you can watch anybody play video games. And some people will be really good, some people will be really bad. But so there's a level of being good at a video game that'll help you be a great streamer. But at the end of the day, you have to be the entertainment that they're coming to see. You have to have either good opinions, you got to have fun with it. You got to acknowledge the people who are sponsoring you, all of these things. And information is not what people really grasp. It's a personality. It's who people are. It's what people think. Those are the things that will really get people to kind of stay with you. And so one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk through this was that that's a very difficult thing for most people to do. It's difficult for people to just put out their opinion, to put out what they think, to basically let themselves be judged by the world. And so I felt like this was a pretty good way of integrating that into what I do, basically just to tell my story through what I do. And the other interesting thing about the timing of it was that Jordan Peterson is now releasing his biblical lectures as weekly podcasts on Sunday. And this week's podcast was the story of Adam and Eve. And the story of Adam and Eve is essentially the biblical story of when self-consciousness happened. And so I'm going to go through how he articulates that. I am not a religious person, so I will probably butcher some of the details, but I think it's a very interesting way to navigate through having the confidence to put out whatever it is you want to put out, right? So another interesting aspect of why I'm doing this for the podcast is that Gary Vee is doing a Tea with Gary Vee every morning. And basically what Tea with Gary Vee is he is having people call in and ask him questions. And one of the questions that happens every single time, which is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings at, I want to say it's 7 a.m. here, 9 on the East Coast, is it's something about I'm not good at telling my story. I can tell other people's stories very well, or I really like to do this, but I don't do it for myself. Basically a bunch of different excuses on why people aren't producing and putting content out, right? And so Gary Vee has his own way of going through it, but for this, I'm going to talk about the way Jordan Peterson articulates it and navigate it through my own experiences and times that I felt were very hard in my own journey because I think it'll help people with an understanding of, I basically think my story will hopefully help someone just say, screw it, accept what they want to do, and at least try it and put it out without feeling bad. But so here we go. So I have notes this time, which is good. And I think that I need to do a better job of making sure I do this. So I come up with my ideas like literally the day of, as far as what I'm going to talk about. And I feel like that actually helps the podcast because whenever I articulate and think through things, I list out a way that I want, like different items. So say I have 25 items that I want to hit. If I've been thinking about them for the entirety of like 3 days, as far as how I want to move through them and all these things, because they're all in my head, I bounce from thing to thing rather than going through a nice progression. And so I think that by doing it on one day, I'm able to do the progression better because it comes more natural than it would if I had thought about it through. So I've only got 5 topic points, but let's go through them. So first, in the Adam and Eve biblical lecture, we are going to be isolating when self-consciousness happened. And so if you've never seen a Jordan Peterson biblical lecture, I recommend them even if you're not religious, because it's the psychological significance of the biblical stories, not necessarily a very religious, you have to believe or you're going to go to hell type of thing. I've never prescribed to that way of thinking. I've always loved the stories because they have very good values within the stories. And so this really it mapped onto my understanding very well, and it's why I advocate for them. It's why I really like to listen to them. I'm actually listening to all of them again as he really re-releases them. So I'm going to quickly overview the story and kind of basically talk through what it means and how he articulates what it means in terms of self-consciousness and the discovery of time, because that is actually what self-consciousness is based on. No, it's not based on it, but they're so interwoven, and you'll understand after I get through kind of the points. But so if you don't know the story of Adam and Eve, basically Adam and Eve are in Eden, which is a walled garden. And if you think about life, all of life is a walled garden. You have the things that you know, which is what we would call order in a sense, and I'll refer to it kind of as order here and there. And then you have what's outside of our wall, which is chaos. So in my personal experience right now, I'm in a very big kind of order versus chaos thing because we are about to move into a new house. It's going to, it's a brand new experience. We're going to be outside of Parker a little bit further than I would have liked. Like we're not as close to the things we like. And so that idea of moving into a new situation is chaos because I do not have an understanding of it. Whereas order would be what I know and where I'm at now. And so a walled garden is essentially civilization, right? You have what you know in a city and in where you live, and then what you don't know is outside of that. And that's actually the way our brain maps as well, which is how the psychological significance comes back to it. So with that said, the key to the story of Adam and Eve is the idea of Eden being a walled garden, and that snakes will always get into your garden. And that translates into the real world because no matter how well you want to keep everything in order, chaos is going to seep in. And this, the whole idea of, snakes getting into the garden is a part of this story of Adam and Eve. And so basically God tells Adam not to eat from the tree of good and evil. And a snake, which is the devil, talks to Eve, right? You have a talking snake, it's a snake with a human head, I think is how he explains it. And you think about what that imagery says, and you think about people, and people are let me articulate this well. If you think of people, they are the most dangerous things on the planet, and they're the most dangerous things to you and I. And when you think about what makes them dangerous, I think the thing he says that makes that will do people in more than anything else is betrayal and deceit. So we can handle things like this, this COVID situation. We can handle things like death and war, but when someone close to you who you trust, who you know is deceitful and, lies to you, right? That's the thing that will really screw up your psychological understanding, because if someone who you trust betrays you, that will send you into chaos a lot worse than it would if it were just, something bad that happens. Like if you think about a lion eating a gazelle, there's no malice in the lion, right? It's just trying to eat. It's trying to feed himself. But when you look into some things that human beings have done, the evil that they have caused, you really understand that some people are really out to watch the world burn. And so there's this idea of basically, so let me get back to the Adam and Eve portion of this. The human-headed snake is Satan and basically tells Eve to eat of the tree of good and evil. It might be the tree of life. I'm not sure which one. I know there's 2 trees. I could be screwing things up, but the overall point hopefully will be articulated. Once she eats the apple, right? She becomes self-conscious. She gives it to Adam. He becomes self-conscious. And then we're going to go through how that translates into becoming self-conscious. So basically, after Adam eats of the tree, eats the apple, God comes up and says, Adam, where are you? He's looking for him. And, and Adam is hiding behind a bush. And he says, I'm hiding because I'm naked. And God says, like, how did you know that you were naked? Did you eat from this, this tree? And the idea here is, I'm going to kind of skip around probably because I have been already, but the idea is that time is the thing that humanity has grasped that makes us different than any other animal, right? And the reason is because the idea of time allows us to see that in the future we may be hurt, and we can also understand what hurts us and therefore what hurts others, right? So once you understand the idea of being vulnerable, of being able to be hurt, and the idea of the future, of being hurt in the future, you can get this the concept of good and evil is then made, because if you understand what would hurt you, it would hurt others. I definitely butchered how he comes to that conclusion, I think, but the idea is, if you know what hurts you, it can hurt others, and therefore, and the idea of being self-conscious is that that you can be hurt, right? I guess evil would be the idea of knowing that you can hurt others. And so the idea of the shadow is integrated into this because at certain levels that you have the capacity for evil. And so we're going to jump ahead to the end of this talk where a question comes in from the audience, and it talks about the idea of Carl Jung's integration of the shadow. And so the idea of a shadow is the fact that we are capable of evil, right? So one of the personality lectures and Jordan Peterson's personality class is all based on the idea of making you understand that you could be the Auschwitz camp guard, in the Holocaust. Like, you could be that evil. And the reason he wants people to understand that is because we look back in time at those evil people and think, oh, I could never be that. But in a sense, you have to understand that you are capable of that. And so the guy's question is basically that the idea of integrating the shadow is what makes you substantial, right? And so he has another video where he talks about baring his teeth. And so the idea here is that if you are not able to inflict some kind of damage, or if you're not dangerous in any way, shape, or form, you are then just a victim. And if you're just a victim, no one will kind of respect you, or I'm trying to think of the best way to word this. This is the part that I haven't really thought through well enough to explain it. But the idea here is that if you're just, I think I'm going off in a tangent that I don't want to go off. I'm going to kind of get back on track. So the idea here is that once Adam understood that he was naked, he recognized his own vulnerability, and he was hiding from God. That in turn creates the idea of the future, because he wouldn't be hiding. I don't know. I can't really get through that part. But so the idea here is that being able to understand the idea of a future allows you to be cautious and have your own, I guess, self-conscious. But so we're going to pull this back, and I'm going to try to build it through in the other way. When you think of the idea of self-consciousness, most people think of the idea of, I'm not going to do something because I'm self-conscious, right? That's their idea. They think in terms of the fact of, in the future, so I'm not going to do this because in the future someone will judge me, someone will hurt me, something will happen. That's the idea. And the way he builds this through the story of Adam and Eve is very cool. I really recommend you listen to it. We're going to go through my own anecdotes on this now. Now, when I hear so many people asking questions to Gary Vee about the idea that, they can't tell people good enough stories, or they can't tell their own story well enough, it's mostly because they understand that they themselves are negative. Like there are negative aspects to themselves. And that point is extremely interesting to me because when you look at other people, right? You look at famous people, you look at your friends, one thing holds true about every one of those people, and it's the fact that you have no idea what's actually going on with them, right? Like you have no idea who they are, but they themselves understand all of their own negative aspects, right? Like you can look at someone else and you can recognize the beauty in who they are and how they affect you, and it's a very awesome experience because you can't see through to all the negative things about them when in turn they actually can see all of the negative things that they are and this and that, right? And so people are scared to show themselves because they know how inadequate they themselves are. And so my goal within this live stream and podcast is to outline a couple of the things that helped me to be able to put out content of myself doing what I'm doing. So the first thing is I wasn't always able to just put content out. Like the very first piece of content I ever put out was a trick video of me doing tricks in Vail when I was coaching for Icon back in college. And the reason I was able to put that out was I wasn't actually talking. I wasn't actually sharing any ideas. I wasn't doing anything of, it was just a highlight video. It was just entertainment. And so that's the trap I feel a lot of younger people fall into because they're really just trying to entertain people, but there's actually no substance to what they're doing, right? It doesn't take a lot of bravery to show yourself hitting a golf ball into a cup or, doing a water bottle flip. What really takes courage is showing people what you think, because no matter what you think, someone doesn't agree with you and they're going to tell you. Like my favorite comments on any of my YouTube videos are always things where they disagree with what I think, because first off, it allows me to navigate through what they think if they're willing to say it, or it allows me to almost be grateful that I'm not the person who's putting negative comments into what someone else is doing. But so back to the idea of self-consciousness, the key concept and the thing that I wrote down is learning to love your own imperfections, right? So in the book, is it that book? I don't know if it's the Master Key System or if it's, what is that called? Do I have it? Is it under this? It might be under this. No, it's not under this. Is it? I don't remember what it's called. But so basically, one of the things that helped me through and basically helped me have kind of a mantra was there was a portion of, it's not the Master Key System. That one's more on thinking through your ultimate plan. I'll remember it later and it'll come to me randomly. But so the idea was to say to yourself, I am whole. What is it? I am whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy, right? And so what I would do is I would take through this idea, through this book, I would do each one 10 times. I would say, I am whole. And so essentially the idea is not just to think through the words of it. The idea is to really embody the feeling. And so I'm going to talk through this one, and then I've got two more examples of this idea. But so the idea is to think through, I am whole. And so I think through and I try and almost feel the idea that I am one solid thing and that you kind of can't pull me apart. So one of the thoughts actually, I'm just going to go through all of them and I'm going to list out what they make me think of as we go through it, because I think that'll be helpful. So the idea of being whole is that you are your own person. You're not pieced apart. There's no part of you that is, elsewhere, that you don't need anything else. You are a complete entity. And so one of the things that came up in the John O'Grady Zoom call this last Saturday was the idea that you are not lacrosse. For, I believe it was Jim Nagel, who had been let go of a job. And I remember going through this completely when I was forced to resign from Grandview, because lacrosse can become so much of who, lacrosse is definitely my online personality, for sure. In no way, shape, or form is lacrosse everything I do. It's something I enjoy. Lacrosse is what I like to teach. It's not who I am. And so that understanding, that mantra of I am whole, really helps me to feel better as one complete unit, right? Then you have, so it's I am whole, I am strong. So I just think through and I say to myself, I am strong. And I kind of build up the idea that I can get through what I need to get through. The other thing with this one is that my family and my friends are really my family. It's like having the wind at your back 24/7. Having just with how much my family supports me and I support them, it's such a quality thing. And so the cool thing is meeting people like Parker, who just joined, who kind of are on the same mission, and we can kind of support each other through what we do. So the next one is, so it's I'm whole, I'm strong, I am powerful. That means that the things that I do can impact the world. That really helps me with really being able to put out content. So I'm whole, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy is basically an idea of, just basically by embodying these things, I allow myself to become the best of who I am by thinking through and bringing those into any situation that I want to bring it into. So I'm going to flash forward this to the discussion between Tony Robbins and Gary Vee. The thing that, so I'm going to tell both sides. First is Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins likes to do 3 in 3 minutes. And the idea is for 3 minutes, 1 minute per thing, he will embody the gratefulness and gratitude of any 3 things in his life. So if I were to choose those 3 things right now, I would be very thankful for Turner, first and foremost. He's like my favorite person to hang out with. He's so much fun, but he definitely understands his shadow for sure, because he's learned that he can be a total a-hole. Then I would go with Wendy. She dropped him off this morning, and without her, the really cool thing about my relationship with Wendy, and the reason that I feel she has become such an amazing part of my life, is that I met her as I quit Ridgeview. So my whole ability to do lacrosse full time, she's been involved in every single step of that. It's become such a huge part of who I am. And if there's any time, I don't feel that I show my gratitude for her as much as I probably should or could. But at the end of the day, that lives in my soul so much, because without her, there's no way I could have become the person I am now. And I really like who I am now. I really like what I'm doing. I like the fact that I'm sharing who I am with the world. I like the idea of sharing my knowledge, even though it's not like I know everything. It's just any piece of content I put out, I look at it as that's what I thought in the moment, because when I put it out, it was the best thing I could put out at that time. But so she has been a huge part of that. And I'd say my last one would probably, it's got to be my whole family. Because with anything else other than that, my mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, my ability to grow up in the place that I did allowed me to not be as self-conscious as I needed to be, because I knew they really taught me that my brothers really taught me that being flawed is not a bad thing, because I got to I got to grow up watching them screw up. It was one of the things that I always used to talk about. And by watching them screw up, I could navigate through it a little better. But one of the things that you could see their struggle, but there was never any quit. And I think that's one of the things that they did. So that whole 3-on-3 idea is something that really helped. But so to tie this all back into the idea of your shadow, and that mantra is the idea of being perfect. And so I left that one on the table because I think this is the one that helps me more than anything. I think what most people struggle with when they are trying to work through what they want to bring to the world is a feeling of inadequacy. And that feeling of inadequacy is based on the fact that they have not been doing the thing that they would like to do. They feel like they can't actually do it. And they really don't want to share with the world the fact that they are inadequate because it will look bad on them. When really, I think what's the word? The initiative to show your journey is more important than what you know. And here's why. I've always said this about college, after I went through college and after I changed my major 4 or 5 times. College does not show employers that if you're an architect, you learn that in college. I get it. That's perfect. Like, good for you. That's awesome. But for me, who got a psych degree could have done, all these other things, the thing it shows people in my mind is that you'll stick with what you're going to do, right? So a lot of people go to college and they drop out. They didn't actually finish what they did. And they might have dropped out for a great reason because they weren't involved in what it was. Like, until I was in my psych classes, college was a joke. I'm sorry. It was a joke. I wasn't fully there. I wasn't engaged in it until I sat in the front of class and stopped talking to girls in the back of class and really watched and interacted with the teacher. I didn't understand what I was missing because I thought that the idea of, chit-chatting with a girl was more important than something else was. But so the idea of being perfect in my mind, the reason why it makes so much sense to me is because your inadequacy is all tied up in your perfection, right? And the practice of making a mistake and moving on and trying to do your best after that is way more important than whether you got something right or not. Like, people always talk about learning styles, right? How do you learn? What's your style? Do you like to read? Do you like to have it visually shown to you? Do you like this, that, and the other thing? And I remember there was a girl, Katie, in college who I was totally trying to hit on. Oh, for sure. She was very cute. But the thing that I noticed right as I walked into her dorm was that she had this list of all the things she had to do, right? And it's basically a rubric for her entire semester, all with dates with all her classes. And it was like, wow, that would probably work for me. I wrote it down, didn't work whatsoever. I had to do it a different way. I had to basically just make sure that in each class I referenced exactly what I needed to do. The other thing that she did that I thought was very cool was she would take her notes in class and then she would rewrite her notes every single time. And that's how she learned. That's how she began to do it. But at no point in time was there a moment when she excluded herself from the possibility of knowing what she wanted to know in the future. And I think that is such a humongous thing so here's how I tie it all together. The idea of being perfect is all based on the idea of what your actions are going to show as you move through time, right? If you look into me as a 12 or 15-year-old, I was completely naive, completely, thanks, Chris. I usually don't focus on the comments till later, but that's pretty cool. I'm glad that you're into the sport of lacrosse. So the idea is your inadequacies are part of your perfection. That's one of the things in that mantra that I really tie to, because the idea of being perfect in that imperfect moment is really what allows you to just move through time and continue to build on whatever it is that you're doing. So how this all relates back to the idea of Adam and Eve and the idea of, so it basically relates back to this guy's question, which is the idea that Carl Jung talking about integrating your shadow, which is essentially the part of yourself that it can be kind of termed, I term it in different ways. First is that you can be dangerous, right? As well as the aspects of yourself that you don't like. And so I got to clarify another part of this. It's not that I want you or think that you should, it's not that I think you should hold on to the things that you feel are negative about yourself. It's the idea that all of those imperfections are wrapped up into a perfect whole. If you've ever seen Good Will Hunting, This is a huge one. Robin Williams basically sits Matt Damon down on a bench, and he's like, you're too scared to show the girl in the movie like who you actually are because you think she's just gonna see this orphan who got who never had love, who never got loved when he was growing up, and basically he says that the real things that make relationships great are all of the little imperfections, the things that make us all unique. And I think, and I really relate to that wholeheartedly, especially in my relationship with Wendy, because in no way are either of us, like, we have got all kinds of crap that we get through in our relationship. But I think the thing that drives us both forward, that helps us both more than anything else, is the idea that we know our own perfections and we are willing to work towards a symbiotic relationship for the both of us. And so the way this terms back into the idea of really, what did I title this again? It was Making Friends with Your Shadow. It's the idea that you really want to allow yourself to be the person who you are now. And there are a bunch of different ways that you can basically do that. And so I'd say the first one is, if you are willing to put in a little bit more effort tomorrow than you did today, with an understanding that you're going to backdrop and slide on occasion, what does it matter what you put out now? Like, who you are is not, like, who I am is not what's on YouTube. It's not what's on TikTok. Like, am I that person? Sure. Sometimes I'm this person who wants to talk about philosophical ideas and I'm not religious at all, but I'm talking about Adam and Eve. Like, come on. But I think that the overarching idea of it is interconnected in a way that I wanted to figure out for myself. So the whole idea of this thing is, as we've been talking about it, was to isolate specific times in my life where I felt like I didn't want to push forward. Like, I didn't want to put out what I wanted to. So the very first YouTube video of those tricks, I really didn't like. The anxiety that I had in hitting enter during that time was incredible, because I knew that judgment would follow. I knew that in the future, maybe someone would, insult me based on what I had put out. Now, did that ever happen? No. But oftentimes the anxiety of getting to a specific situation is way worse than the actual situation. It's what I tell people with lifting. Like, I hate lifting. I hate lifting. I hate working out. It's not my thing. And I need to do like a TikTok thing where, like, every day, because this whole situation we're in where we can't really leave and do much, like, I think I'm heavier than I've ever been before, and I need to not be. So we'll see if I end up doing that. But I don't hold myself or beat myself up about the fact that I weigh more than I've ever weighed before. I think what it comes down to is, now I just know that action has to happen now, and then that action will take place, right? Because it's in my head. I know I've done enough in life to know that if there is an event that I need to make sure I change, that I will actually go through and change it. Where people get into trouble is they just don't change what they know they should change. So another thing that Jordan Peterson says in a whole other, I'm not sure which lecture series it is, it might be his personality lecture, is that most of what he did as a clinical psychologist was not basically, and essentially a clinical psychologist is like a therapist. You're going to sit there, you're going to talk about kind of what's going on. But what he said that he did more than anything was analyze how people were living and help them to live more, a better way, right? So you can look in that in however you want to think of it, but the way in which you live your life is more important than you think. Like, having a routine, making sure you do what you would like to do during the day. And the other one that I like from him a lot is the idea of a schedule. A schedule is not something that should trap you in. You should design the schedule that you want to have. So, okay. Man, I go back and forth. I don't know how everyone follows along with how I talk, but a lot of times I just bounce from thing to thing to thing. But so, back to the point, what I wrote down, which is learning to love your imperfections. The thing I don't think many people understand and bring with them, probably due to the malevolence of other people being mean in certain times, is people don't understand that those little failures, the little things that, like if I look back at videos I made now, there's tons of little failures in any of those videos, but that's what I thought at the time. And, I've if you stay up with what I've created, you'll kind of see how my thought has changed over time. But the idea is the idea is to know that people are along for the ride with you, right? People they might judge you, they might be mean, they might say negative things, but as long as you believe in what you're doing and you have, that was the other big point. As long as your true nature, what you're trying to do is kind of true to who you are and true to what you think you should be doing, your reasoning is true, that stuff should kind of just fall off at the wayside. So let's see. The next thing that I wrote down was clarity through suffering. So one of the reasons why you have to make friends with the things you don't like about yourself is because they are not something you want to turn away from, because they'll strangle you. They'll add up to each other. They'll add up on top of each other until you can't move anymore, because basically, if you don't handle them, they're just going to add up and add up and add up. But if you can hold them in your mind and understand that you have to do them and then just check them off one by one, it'll allow you to slowly and methodically move through life in a good way. So another kind of cool thing that I do often, or I have done in the past, I haven't done one in a while, for a couple reasons, but we won't get into the reasons, is a daily productivity planner. So each day, essentially it's a piece of paper, and I learned this from Brendan Burchard, who is another person who I learned a lot from as I went through my, growth. You've got 3 items, 3 topics of things that you want to do. So for me, usually it's, POWLAX social media, right? So I got to make at least a post a day. That's my minimum. Then you have Cherokee Trail high school coaching, which I haven't had for obviously the whole spring. And then there's like master coach stuff, which is I've got to put some work in every day. And you list out what you have, like what you'd like to accomplish in that day. And then in the middle, it's who do I need to reach out to? And who am I waiting for a response from? And then at the end, you list what's most important. What are you going to absolutely do in order? What are you going to get done? And it really helps to make sure that I'm prioritizing what I do. And I should probably be doing it more often now, because I fall out of doing it quite a bit. And so the way I'm able to navigate what I should do next is all based on my experiences moving through time. And what I notice most about my experience as I've gone through and done certain things is that the feeling of posting, the feeling of putting out certain things it doesn't ever go away. So like take my TikTok and my Instagram posts every day. The vast majority of those are parts of videos that I've already completed. And you know that based on the little YouTube symbols on the bottom with the name, right? Those clips are part of videos I've already created. And the reason why I do that is because it's an easy way for me to get out content every day, because I can take those from that. And those don't really take much because those have been out there. But when I put out a brand new video, like the 232 clear video, those freak me out, because it's not like they freak me out. It's just that when I hit enter and I go, okay, this is going out, a couple things happen. First, I'm like, oh crap, I hope I got it as good as I possibly could, right? And then my brain goes, well, if I didn't, maybe I'll update it some other day. People will say this and that. They'll help me out. They'll show me where I was wrong or what they like to do, yada, yada, yada. And I can calm down. But then what I get is this feeling of accomplishment, this feeling of moving towards my goal, of creating the best database of accessible lacrosse content that you can find, right? And there's another whole goal in the works as well. But the reason why I think I'm able to do that is because I know that at the end of the day, my my reasoning is good. The reason why I'm doing it is good. And if we can keep 4, 5, 6 players playing the sport because their coaches watched a YouTube video that I created that told them to play more than they just work on, skills, because you have, like, if it's not fun, which skills are not usually that fun until you get a love for the sport and you realize how the accuracy level is going to help you. Like, it's just got to be fun before then. But so if we can keep, a few kids playing who wouldn't play because their coaches got frustrated, that's my goal. That's what I want to do. And what's absolutely remarkable about it is that when I meet coaches at tournaments and they're like, oh, I love what you do, like, you really helped me in this time, I know that a kid was impacted by, and the coach too. That's the other thing. Like, I tend to eliminate the coach from what I think, even though the coaches are the most important part of what I do, right? Like, in no way am I the person who knows everything about lacrosse. I am a measly high school coach, right, with aspirations to coach in college at some point, even though I have no idea how that's going to happen because I don't foresee myself moving away from my family. The aspect of it that I think gets me more than anything is basically that because I have accepted that I don't know everything, but I know, that was the Brendan Burchard thing. That's right. That's another thing I was going to say, was that just because you're not the expert in what it is doesn't mean you can't share your own understanding or even others' understanding of what things are. But so I don't know if I explained that well. I think at this point I've kind of piecemealed a lot of things together, and with, let's see how long we're at, 46, with about 4 or 5 minutes, I'm going to shout out a couple people and go back through this whole idea in as succinct manner as possible. So, first off, I think that the way I'm going to do this, at least a subsection, a portion of my podcast / live stream, is I'm going to incorporate something that I learned over the week that could become the basis of what I'm learning. This week, it was the idea of good and evil, when time became a concept and how that, talked about, or how that created the idea of good and evil through Jordan Peterson's discussion about the story of Adam and Eve, how the idea of good and evil, the discovery of good and evil, because of time and understanding that whatever affects you will affect, like, once you understand your own vulnerability, you understand how you could be evil to others, and how, man, that's the part that I can't seem to get my whole head around. How once you have an understanding of being evil or being inadequate, so that's the part, okay, once you understand your own vulnerability, you understand your idea of being inadequate, right? So if you understand your own idea of being inadequate, that will make you cautious in how you move through the world. But also you have an understanding of, how you could hurt people, right? So that's the idea of good and evil. If you know what hurts you, you know what hurts others. If you understand the idea of I'm not sure how time works into that, but I know, like, Jordan does it in an unbelievable fashion. It's really remarkable. So I really recommend you watch that. But then the idea is, within your own vulnerability, the key to producing is really loving your imperfections. It's understanding what they are, because you're willing to work towards them. That's at least what helped me, right? So that falls into the Good Will Hunting principle, which is your imperfections are really the things that distinguish you and who you are. And those are actually the things that people want to see, because what I feel a lot of people don't that's the other part. Sorry. The reason vulnerability and imperfections hinder most people is because they themselves know more of their own imperfections than anyone else could ever know, right? The reason people don't move is because, and when I say don't move, I mean don't put out content based on who they are, what they want to do, is because they understand their own inadequacies to a level where, like, they don't feel good about themselves because they know how they're not perfect, right? But what is perfect, right? There is no perfect. So another one of my favorite movies, and I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but this was a movie that really solidified kind of who I was, because when I was growing up, I was a chubby kid, like I'm a chubby kid now because of this whole COVID thing. I'm blaming COVID. It's really the fact that I eat candy and I eat cake, and I shouldn't eat as much cake and candy as I eat because it makes me fat. So that's the whole thing. But so this story, the movie that I liked growing up was Angus. And Angus is a movie. Angus, if you don't know, is what you call a cow. And so he's just kind of a fat kid growing up in high school, and he really likes this really pretty girl. And the pretty girl turns out to be bulimic, and he had no idea at the end. And then they get to dance, and it's a really cool movie because you get to see his own dealing with his feeling of inadequacy. And his grandpa is the best person in the entire movie. If you've never seen Angus, I really recommend you watch it, because his grandpa is like this old dude who's just like, screw him. Who cares what anybody thinks? You know, that's his like line that really, you know, hits him. But so I really like that portion because, you know, you can understand your own inadequacies, but the thing that people like to see is they like to see the movement. So, okay, I got to get back on track of the articulation of how all of these ideas map together. So, once you understand your own vulnerability, you understand the idea of good and evil, because you can be good by, or if you know what hurts you, you know what you can do to hurt others, right? That's the idea of good and evil. The other thing about this is that Carl Jung said that integrating your shadow, the things you don't like about yourself, or your own danger, is what makes you substantial, right? Because if you are not able to cause harm, you are just a victim, and and by cause harm, I don't necessarily mean, you know, punching someone or, how would I articulate this? I don't mean hurting people. I mean acting in the world, right? Like, or acting on yourself, even if you know your own inadequacies. Like, you have to make friends with your own inadequacies in order to, you know, move through them. Because if you're friends with your own inadequacies, you then have the ability to move with them and on them, right? Like, that's the basic idea. If you know what you need to work on and you're friends with that thing, you will then end up working on them. And so then the next part is learning to love your imperfections, which all relates back to the idea of your imperfections are actually the things that people love most about who you are. Like, I have no idea. Let's see where we're at. Okay, we got 8 people on Instagram. No, 2 on Instagram, 8 on TikTok, 5 on 5 on YouTube. And actually, the 5 on YouTube is actually cool. We actually have 5 likes on YouTube. So apparently people like to hear me ramble about these ideas, which is shocking to me. But the fact that people enjoy my own, I guess, I hope that people enjoy hearing me think through what I've learned about, because it may help them think through and learn about some of the same ideas. And at the end of the day, for me, I don't even know if this really helps me solidify my ideas, but I think that it does, because it definitely challenges me to do that. So that's definitely a nice little aspect, little thing. So the whole idea resorts, or I guess whittles down to the idea of the story of Adam and Eve dictates the idea of understanding one's own vulnerability, because once he eats of the apple, he understands that he is naked, thereby understands his vulnerability, because you wouldn't hide unless you felt vulnerable. That understanding of his own vulnerability is what teaches him about good and evil, because once you understand your own vulnerability, you understand how you can hurt others. That also is an understanding of time, and that's the part that I've got to re-listen to, because that's the part that I can't quite articulate, but it's based on the idea of your own vulnerability in the future. And that's where, once you understand that you're vulnerable and that you can be vulnerable in the future, you will do what you need to do now so that you are not vulnerable in the future. That's why squirrels hide nuts in trees. That's why, and it might just be an evolutionary aspect of what that is. But at the end of the day, it is something that is bound in time. Right. And so that understanding of time is what I gotta watch through that part. But so once you understand the idea of good and evil, you have to integrate some portion of it's not evil, but you have to be able to stand up for yourself. You have to be able to bare your teeth. You have to be able to accept your own vulnerability and then act upon it. And that's where loving your imperfection comes in. The way I love what I'm not good at is because I know that at the end of the day, I'll be able to work on it, and I will try to work on it, right? And I follow all these good people, Jordan Peterson, Gary Vee, Jason Capital. There's a couple new ones that I've been watching recently, and I mass listen to them all of the time because they keep me in a good headspace. I also read good things, and that's where the mantra from, it's literally the book that everybody reads for improving. Hold on, I'm going to find it because I know it'll come up once I look on this on Amazon. Sorry for the clicks. Okay, I'm going to click it. It's not the master key system, which is what I thought it was. What are the other recommendations? Nope, it's not even in there. I don't know why I can't think of it, but it's literally it's like the one book that everybody reads for getting better at things. But either way, so the portion of that book that I can't remember that I like so much is the idea of a mantra of I am whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. And the key is that you embody those things, because so much of what we bring to the world has to be embodied in our emotions first. Like, another cool thing about how Jordan Peterson describes this is the idea of being hungry. When you're hungry, a lot of times all of your emotions are geared towards the idea of getting food, and you can be kind of irritable in those times. But it's almost not even, I guess it's not even necessarily an emotion, but I guess it kind of is. But basically, how you feel is what you put out into the world. It's not all in what you want to put out into the world. It's what you feel. And so if you feel whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy in your own ways, you will bring the best part of who you are into the day. The other thing I like, and it's funny because Wendy had to move some of my mantras, but on each door, there's a doorway item, right? So it's 3 things that when you move into a new room, you do new things. And for me, it became really hard because since I work from home, shutting work off and bringing family home was tough for me at certain times. And so as I would walk into my room to work, it was, focused, purposeful, action. That's what I liked within here. Once I go into my house, it was, caring, empathetic, and, purposeful. Like purposeful with my time, not always on my phone, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So that's as good as I think I'm going to be able to do for today. My call to action before we do a couple of before we do anything else is to share the podcast, share the live stream if you enjoyed it, critique me if you thought I did something well or didn't do something well, and then join people to my journey of thinking through all of these thoughts. The next thing is, if you have any questions, we are going to take questions for Instagram. I'm going to I'm going to restart up a new one. So you guys will have to come into the new one. And then so we'll do a Q&A for about 15 minutes. And then once we do that Q&A, we will, we'll wrap it up. But yeah, I appreciate everyone listening for this whole time. So I'm going to look back through the TikTok thing. Your grandma lives in Colorado Springs. That's awesome. My little sister used to live in Colorado Springs, but now she lives in Castle Rock. It's Fortnite Clan. What's up? We all got to eat, bro, for sure. Let's see. YouTube is not receiving enough video. Apparently, someone might be on my Wi-Fi. Okay. Shared a story through Instagram. Hopefully that'll go. Yo. Emerson, I'm pumped that I'm your favorite TikToker. That's awesome. Hello, hi, your local jukebox. Da-da-da-da. Even more. Chris, you are very welcome. Come on. Oh, that's why it's taking its time, is because it is it's hopping off. Michael, Law of Attraction, I think that is law. Yeah, it must be Law of Attraction. So it's not that other book that I was thinking of before. Okie dokie. We're going to go back in. I don't want the video on Instagram. I would like the live again. Okay, I think that's there. Perfect. Okay, we should be good to go live there. So let me know any questions. I think I have a couple at the bottom of TikTok, and we'll go through it. Lil Neck Rai Rai. I think that's how you're going to say that. Cool. That's awesome that we played against you with Scorpions. I'm hoping that we can get back into all of this stuff. Do I know a guy named Trevor Williams? I could. I'm not so I'm really good with names of the kids that I coach. That's who I'm really good with. And so for people getting on Instagram right now, if you're getting on Instagram, I'm just doing a quick Q&A to end up this live stream. So let me know if you have any questions. Oh, you play on RC. So you were at the Adrenaline Challenge, I think, is the one that we played you guys at. We had a couple good games with those. It makes me want to click your profile and check. Comment on my most recent video, the one about catching, and I'll check out your profile. Let's see. I wonder if I had any other decent questions from other people. Jace, let me know if you have any questions. We're going to leave it for another minute, and then we are going to wrap it all up. But so basically just taking questions at this point, and I thought that was a pretty decent podcast. YouTube liked it a lot, which I think is very cool. I've never gotten 5 likes on a live stream through YouTube before. Usually it's like 1, but apparently some of the things that I said today were good. I really think that at the end of the day, you just have to know you're not perfect, and you have to be okay. I started lacrosse when I was, I want to say 5 or 6, something like that. My brother so I have 3 older brothers. They are 12, 9, and 6 years older than I am. And when the brother who is 9 years older than I am was, I want to say, a freshman or a sophomore in high school, he found lacrosse through one of his friends. And once he brought the stick home, our family sport changed from soccer to lacrosse. And so if he was 9 years older than me and he was 14, yeah, I was probably 5 or 6. And that's when I started. I didn't, Nathan, how old are you? I didn't really play the sport in an organized way until I was in, I want to say 8th grade. And I played in 5th grade and then in 8th grade organized. And then I played in high school. But other than that, I just played, right? That was the thing. So Nathan just said, could I contact college coaches at this time? Absolutely. 100%. He says he's 17. You can absolutely contact college coaches. I recommend watching the video on my YouTube with Jim Berkman, 10 tips to getting recruited. Make sure you follow that rubric of how you want to reach out to college coaches, especially within an email context, because your ability to reach out, you want to put your best foot forward, and the little things within reaching out to college coaches that will cancel you if you don't do them correctly are pretty huge. Like, each email must be addressed to a specific person, not, hey, coaches, I am this. It's got to be like, let's take UNC because it's popped in my head. Like Coach Bresci, I am a da-da-da, and then you list out whatever it is you have. But I definitely think it's a good time to reach out to college coaches. I don't think it really matters when, but you can always be doing it. I might do more. The thing about the trick tutorials is at this point in time, so the question is, will you do any more trick tutorials? It's possible, but what I ended up noticing at the end of the trick videos was that for the most part, I was comboing things that I wouldn't necessarily teach as an individual aspect. So here's what I like about tricks. First, I liked the fact that there wasn't all the trick videos back when I started, so I got to actually just kind of like do the ones that I thought I liked. Like I have a style that's very different than, like silky lax or whatever. And then what's the other one? Energy lax. Like they're really good tricks. Silky lax takes a lot of emphasis from hockey, which I didn't even know, but I don't really care about baton twirling. I think that's what it reminds me of is they throw the ball up in the air and they twirl their stick like a baton. The thing about doing the trick tutorials is that I can do them, but I've already like 50 of them. That's a lot. Like, I don't know that there are many other tricks that I can really get into. Jeremy, we're doing Q&A if you have any questions. So I think I might do them at some point, but I think they'll be more limited. I like the idea of doing more entertainment style trick things because I think that's where that is solid and around. I'm definitely going to pull all 50 of the tricks and wall ball videos and put them on YouTube. And then I hope that people just look through them. The cool thing about TikTok, and the thing that I think I like about TikTok more than anything else, is that when you follow someone on TikTok, you get all of their posts back through time, right? So anyone who follows me on TikTok is going to continually get those trick videos as they move through time, even though I'm not posting them every day. So I think the way TikTok is set up is unbelievable because once you post on Instagram, people have like a day and a half to see it and then it's nothing. The other thing about TikTok though is if you follow 180,000 people, you're going to be getting such random stuff. You're probably not going to be able to go back through time. I recommend finding max 150 people that you like on TikTok, following them, and then seeing what they've done their entire way through. Question is, do you think summer ball will be good to go? That's something I almost don't even want to talk about on here because it's I'm very opinionated in this sense. So let's see. I'm going to wrap up the YouTube video and then I'll talk about it through Instagram and TikTok. But so YouTube, everybody, thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure to check out the POWLAX store. Buy Pearl lacrosse balls from pearllacrosse.com using code POWLAX as well as Flip Goalie, and then anything else. Check out the YouTube, follow, subscribe, all that stuff. I need another like 2,800 subscribers to put all of my merch on YouTube, so I think that would be cool if that happens. But so we're going to sign off on YouTube and we're going to go to just Instagram and TikTok. So if you guys want to catch me on Instagram and TikTok right now, since there's 4 of you guys still on,